Jeremy, I understand you've been working on a mindset project. Could you just give us an insight into what you've been doing?
Yeah, I suppose it was part of the level 4 process when I started that back in 2009, 2010. I suppose what I went into that process doing was trying to become a better coach and trying to help the players I was working with on a day-to-day basis and find answers as to how I could help them improve. As part of that process, we read the Talent Code as one of the books that we were given at the start, and that within that text it referenced Carol Dweck and the work that she's done over the last 30 years at Stanford, looking at motivation, people's response to challenges, and the idea of the fixed and the growth mindset and the behaviours that certainly that fall out of the fixed mindset, I felt best encapsulated some of the challenges that I was facing with the young players I was working with.
What is a fixed and what is a growth mindset? And I guess from a coach's point of view, how could a coach use that to help develop players?
Okay, I suppose in terms of explaining the fixed and the growth mindset, what it's often mistaken as sometimes as kind of the nature versus nurture debate. It is that, but it isn't in some ways. It's essentially not scientifically about whether you believe bowling 90 miles an hour is something that's innate or whether it's something that can be learned and developed. It's your belief about it. So it's understanding that what the belief that you hold, and beliefs can be irrational or rational, and how those beliefs impact on ultimately people's behaviour. So it's your belief about ability, intelligence, or anything else, and whether you believe it can change. So if you believe that an ability is innate and it can't be learned, as a coach, why would you teach it? Rather than teach something, you look to identify people that either have that skill or that attribute or don't have it. As a player, if you believe it's innate, well, why work hard? Because you've either got it or you haven't. And in a world where you've either got it or you haven't, failure tends to be final. And if failure is final, and your ability reflects, I suppose, is part of who you are, and who you are is then fixed, then you're going to see challenges potentially as a threat. If other people do something and you can't, then that's going to be a threat. Effort becomes worthless because actually, if it's innate, what's the point of effort? So there's a whole raft of behaviours that I think if you look at probably sometimes some very able players that we work with, and we can kind of get frustrated as coaches because maybe they're not learning, they're not moving forward, other people are trying to start catching them up. And we want to help them. For me, that sort of fixed mindset kind of summed up where some of our players were at the time, and then understanding the growth mindset is a world where you believe that ability can change. So in that world, failure is never final, it's an opportunity to learn. It's not about I can't do it, it's about I can't do it yet, and seeing that actually effort then becomes important, because with effort you believe that actually I can learn and I can improve. And all the behaviours that flow from that, you're going to be more responsive to a challenge. You're going to see challenge as actually not a test of who you are, but where you are now and what you can then do to improve. So there's a lot more in terms of a lot of the things that we kind of attribute to positive behaviours in players, and players we identify as captains, players that we kind of want in our team, the kind of people you want alongside you in a battle, people that accept feedback, go looking for feedback. A lot of those behaviours come out of a growth mindset.
Does this relate to coaches having a fixed mindset and a growth mindset?
What we've seen in the research we've done to date is that largely the beliefs that we hold as coaches or as parents, we actually communicate those to the players that we work with. So we've actually seen a correlation between the beliefs that coaches hold and then the beliefs that their players hold. So what we found particularly is that firstly, nobody is either fixed or growth. You can have very different beliefs about very different things. Largely we've seen the things that are taught explicitly, skills, sort of strength and conditioning, people hold much more growth-minded views about, whereas actually the things that are taught less, mental toughness, some of the tactical elements of the game and leadership particularly, young players and adults hold much more fixed views of.
Why is that? You just mentioned the strength thing. Is it the visual thing of actually being able to grow bigger, or is it because you spend more time in that environment? I think when we've sort of asked coaches, and we've broken cricket down into 26 parts,
and ask people about to what degree do they believe those proficiency or how much ability can change in those areas. And I suppose what we've seen to date is that when you start talking about mental toughness, coaches will say, well, they've either got it or they haven't, you know. And again, I think about how a lot of the people go about talking about mental toughness. They try to identify people that are mentally tough versus those that aren't, and then rather than seeing it as actually something that can be learnt. So if as a coach you believe it's innate and it can't be learnt, then you're never going to teach it. So if kids are never taught it, then they're going to think, well, and coaches only ever kind of identify those that are and those that aren't, then that's going to shape their beliefs. And I think, I mean, again, what we've generally seen is that when we've spoken to people and sort of asked them about the answers and why they've put what they've put, is largely where people don't understand the process of how you'd improve something or how something can be learned. They attribute it to a myth of talent or a gift or whatever it might be. So really where people have much more growth-minded views is because they understand the process of learning and development and acquiring a skill. Whereas I suppose for many people watching sport would see, you know, if you take a penalty in a World Cup final, you know, England can't win a penalty. You know, can we beat Germany in a penalty? Oh, we'd never do that. We're just not good at penalties. Can you learn it? Oh, how can you learn to take a penalty in a World Cup final? You know, and it's actually taking them through that process of understanding how those skills can be built, and then you can start to shift their beliefs and then obviously their behaviour. How's
this work changed your coaching philosophy?
How's it changed it? I think it's simplified things in many ways, because it's about really helping people to create and foster positive beliefs about ability. It's challenged me in a lot of ways to kind of think, well, actually, you know, how much do I actually teach mental toughness and the psychological skills required of being an elite sports person. So yeah, it's helped me reflect on my own coaching, but ultimately, for me, it's about, if you know, rather than addressing behaviour, which I think is what, you know, as teachers, as coaches, we spend a lot of time either being frustrated by behaviour. I think when you start to understand this, you start to go back to actually, well, how am I shaping these young people's beliefs? How have their journeys to date to this point impacted on shaping their beliefs? What are their beliefs? And then when I think you go back to that, you can actually have a kind of, rather than forcing people to behave in an unnatural way to them, you can help shape beliefs that will actually impact on them behaving in a much more natural way. So yeah, for me it's very much about shaping helpful beliefs about ability.
How do coaches find their own coaching philosophy? Because I think the word philosophy is quite a scary thing. It delves right in deep into you as an individual. How does a coach go through that process? Is it quite a natural thing by coaching and you just take that on, or is there a point where you can really sit down and say, actually, what is my coaching belief and philosophy?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing question, in the fact that I think as a coach, if you're really kind of challenging yourself, your philosophy will change and it will evolve as you go along, because different things will come along that will challenge it. I mean, from my point of view, I started with very definite views about how certain things should and shouldn't be done. Generally what I've ended up with is quite strong views over certain things. So for me, I think there are some fundamental principles of cricket that you need if you're going to be successful. However, how those look and how people acquire them, I'm a lot more flexible than what I used to be. I think that actually, you know, if people are going to achieve their potential, and I think that's the other thing, is trying to define success. For me, I'd see success as much more relative to the individual I'm working with, rather than I'm trying to produce a player to go from the under-15s to the 17s, from the 19s into the seniors, and producing a successful senior team is the only vision of success. I think success is relative to the individual and can be, it could be someone's quite an academic, but actually they want to enjoy cricket, and actually cricket's got to sit alongside their academics for their vision of success, which is having a career, having a family, and being successful at cricket. For other people, a bit more single-minded, they want to be just successful in cricket and have one or two things outside, which is fine. So I've had a much more broader view of success. And for me, obviously, you've got to be strong, you've got to be fit, and that underpins your basic skills. But I think if you can wrap that up with a passion for the game, that's really my philosophy, and that's quite broad, and that's been the bit that's allowed me to work across other sports, because those are the things that translate into success from any domain into another.
The term player-centred coaching the term's been around for some time, over the past number of years, and a lot of coaches use it. What does player-centred coaching mean to you? And could you give us some examples around player-centred coaching and try and bring it to life?
Yeah, I suppose for me the nub of it is actually, I think as a coach, certainly years ago, you kind of got quite a view of what you're trying to achieve. You either have a job description, you've got KPIs, there are certain things that as an organisation or as an individual that you're trying to achieve. And I suppose because of that, there's a tendency for us to kind of say to people, right, this is what I'm trying to achieve, this is what the organisation is trying to achieve, and this is how you need to fit into it if you're going to be part of this. And I suppose what I try to do now, and across all sports, is really try and actually find out what the individual is trying to achieve, and actually work out who is this individual, what is it they're trying to achieve, why are they trying to achieve it. Challenge them a little bit to find out if that's actually what they really think, because I think when, as a coach, if you're talking to your players about what they want to achieve, they'll think there's a correct answer sometimes, and it's to really dig down and find out why they want that. And then it's to support them achieving their vision of what success is. And again, for some people we work with, particularly in Europe, they're going to have other jobs, they're going to have careers, they're going to have families, and it's to find out how that balance looks for them in an ideal world, and it's going to be very different. And then it's aligning, starting with the individual and their objectives and what they consider success to be, and then trying to help them understand, and us as an organisation understand, how that's going to fit together with our objectives. And for me, that's where you start in terms of a player-centred approach, because from there everything comes. But to start from an organisational view of saying, this is who we are, these are our objectives, and then how do you want to fit into this, or this is what we want from you, then becomes a behaviour that kids have to either conform in a way that might not suit them. And that's not to say that's necessarily not how it needs to be in some circumstances, but certainly starting with an understanding of the individual, I think you can better find their role within those objectives.